All right, welcome to I'm Loving Life podcast with A&T Mechanical. We have Tim. So what's up?
Hola.
Now we have Melissa. She's a big entrepreneur. She sells all across the world. And I'm super excited.
Nation, not world, but yeah.
Nation.
Well,
Dang it,
we
not
tried
exporting
that.
yet,
That's fine.
I
That's
tried to
fine.
hit it. But.
Maybe eventually.
Yeah,
It'll be okay.
eventually.
So let's explain the name a little bit.
Yeah. Mollycoddled Hash Slinger means spoiled chef.
Okay.
Did not mean to start a candy business, but there's a whole story behind that.
I'm excited to hear about it.
Yeah.
But so she has a sweet tooth, I'm assuming, and that's what you got into it?
Not as much anymore. I'm a little burned out on candy at this point. Yeah.
So let's go with the name first.
Yeah.
What's up with the name?
I had a food blog back when food blogs were, I don't want to say cool. They're still in existence today. They're just not at peak like they were 10 or 15 years ago. And kind of got burned out with that, but still owned the domain. And then my dad passed away in 2011. And for a couple of years, really just wanted to nail, what is something I can make in his memory for friends and family? Because he was an incredible cook and just larger than life personality. And I didn't want to make banana nut bread.
Right.
You know, it could if it was going to be Dad's legacy, it had to be something
Let's make it worth
big.
it.
Yeah. So I had an epiphany at some point that it was like caramel. Dad loved anything caramel or black licorice, but we're not doing black licorice.
Yeah, that's gross.
So no Jaeger. No Jaeger.
There is a very niche market for that, not me. And so anyway, I went to the kitchen and got down the rabbit hole of making caramel.
Okay.
Come to find out there's a science behind it. I was taught to cook by eyeballing measurements, ingredients. You cannot do that with candy making. So after probably...
Especially the level you're at right now.
100%. So after about 20 failed batches, finally got the base recipe down and created our signature whiskey caramel. Meant to make a rum caramel to start. I was out of my rum stash, so I got into my husband's whiskey stash. And it's still here all these years later.
So the hash part.
Yeah, hash slinger is slang for cook or chef.
See,
So
didn't know that.
I always joke with everyone,
Slinger.
we do have customers that walk into the retail store and they're like, what kind of candy shop is this?
Yeah.
And we were here before that market was here.
Gotcha.
That's what I like to say.
Yeah.
But that's the $1 million question is, before we opened our brick and mortar 3 years ago, we looked very hard at, do we change the name? If we're going to do it, now is the time. We surveyed our customers. They were 100% against changing the name. They're like, it's very unique. Keep it. Don't mess with it. And then it was I looked at just the financial side of the marketing collateral. And at that point, it would have cost us tenfold to rebrand. So here we are.
But that's pretty awesome to go down that journey and make that decision. So we talked in our last podcast, 3 to 5 years, you're really doing what you've done, and you've already passed that. So over the nation. So how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah. Well, so part of that story is I never meant to turn this into a business. It was meant to just be Christmas gifts for friends and family. And then that turned into neighbors going, are you going to make any for Valentine's Day? I think my husband would like those. Or, my husband loved them and wanted more.
Right.
And so then we made them for Valentine's Day. Then it was a Father's Day. And then it was Christmas again. And after 2 years of making caramel at home, my husband was like, I think you got something going here. And I was like, nope. I have a background in horticulture and landscape design. I'm not. I am not a formally trained chef.
So Tim said you're really awesome. So
That's country girl. There's a bunch of facets to it.
Yeah, I'm a former rodeo girl, ag girl, all the things.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely half city girl too. So growing up in Yukon, it was like that though.
So you're from Yukon.
My husband and I both are. So it was then Yukon was a mostly farming community when we were growing up, but it was you're right there at the metro. So I'm I will get my hands dirty. You will find me with a fishing pole in my hand or hunting, but I'm also a city kid. So it's a good blend. But the business just kind of rolled into its own thing. And then at that point, we were falling into the cottage baker's law. At that time, you could only make $25,000 a year in baked goods, if you will, cooking from home. We hit that in the first year.
Wow.
And I'm a rule follower. Yeah. And so I looked at my husband and I was like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
I was like, yes, I am. And he's like, no, you're going to have to figure out how to make this legit. And so then I started down another rabbit hole of figuring out the food laws in Oklahoma. And it was a lot of gray area, no clear defined answers. And I was frustrated. I'm like, how can the state health department not have blanketed what you can and can't do? It's, here's our code book, but nowhere in there was there room for candy. It was salsa, beef jerky, all these things. So I got lucky and stumbled upon a incubator program in Tulsa called Kitchen 66. This was in 2015, fall of 15, I think. And it was a 3-month intensive program that you get to go to and really like hear the Tulsa Health Department inspectors.
Oh, wow.
They had a commercial kitchen you could get licensed at and manufacture in their commercial kitchen by the hour. Mm-hmm. But financially, our candy is such a time-consuming product that I was going in the red very quickly producing at the hourly rate in that kitchen. Mm-hmm. So I got lucky, and a friend of mine had a coffee shop and roastery in the small town we lived in, and was like, hey, we're not using the kitchen. What do you need? And I was like, well, I need a stove. We run on gas. And so he's like, let's get a stove. So I bought a commercial stove for $1,200. The gas line was already there from his coffee roaster, and that was our official launching plan for the commercial kitchen. Mm-hmm. So
talk about just starting a little business and growing.
Doors just kept opening, and it was like, okay, what am I like? Is this bigger than us? What are we doing?
And you have one. You, the full time, and then 2 helpers.
Yes, and we have a lot of seasonal help, and then friends and family like Tim, his wife, come in and help.
He's like, "Can you go?" I'm like, "I'm sorry."
At that point,
get volunteers. So.
I mean, just like all small business around the nation, it's hard to find employees right now.
Yeah.
But for us, corporate gifting is our bread and butter. So, like September, October through the end of the year, I'm working 80-hour weeks, just keeping up with candy production.
No way.
We're shipping hundreds of packages out a day.
So I was going to ask, like, what's your season? Like, it's not Valentine's.
Candy season. Yeah, Valentine's is weird. It's like an impulse buy holiday. And so now that we have a brick and mortar, we're gaining some traction there. But that's one of those, like, no offense, guys, but men think last minute.
Absolutely.
Crap, I'm heading home.
I agree with you.
It's Valentine's Day. I got to go
I'm stop at Walmart.
grab something randomly.
Walmart, Target. You got to go to Target.
Right.
Just kidding.
Sorry, I'm not that
a
bitchy.
little bit, But so for us, Valentine's Day is like a 1 or 2 day holiday, whereas like Thanksgiving, Christmas with corporate gifting is a whole season.
Mm-hmm. So what kind of corporate gifting does that look like? So is that like 10 people, 100 people?
It depends. We do a lot for like oil and gas, banking, construction, and it's their client list. So for some companies, that might be 25. And for others, like we've got some bank clients that are hundreds of gift sets that go out the door.
No.
So
that's
like
amazing.
Engineers, stuff like that too, right?
Yeah. And we see some industries that want to like budget dump Q4. Their CFO's like, hey, we got to offload X or our tax liability is going to be here. And so then it's like, okay, our budget is now this. What can you do?
Like, whatever you want.
Yeah. And there is a science behind corporate gifting. I tell people like, don't gift at the holidays, truthfully. Like, it's great, but that gift is going to go to the CEO's desk with 15 other gifts.
Right.
And it's going to end up in the break room, and they're not even going to see what's in there. So if you want to make an impression, do Halloween or Thanksgiving or random just because through the year.
Okay.
For the longest time, my dad always wanted to send Thanksgiving cards out.
Yeah. We have several clients that do that. We do thankful boxes.
He was like, send all everybody for Thanksgiving because it would be different than
Christmas.
and
then it's not tied to a religious holiday.
Right.
If you're, worried about that. And depending where you are in the nation, that kind of matters sometimes too. But Thanksgiving is
we're in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
We're a red state.
It'll be fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Melissa's incredibly modest and humble and stuff, but she actually, as have you heard, like some people are, oh, she does candy. No. Melissa doesn't just do candy.
Right.
Like she's actually like a CEO top level type person that analyzes everything. Like every time I talk to Melissa, I'm always learning new things, especially about business, So that's one of the things that I love so much. And the other thing, she also champions like made in Oklahoma products too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So soaps, all different kind of things. I love going to the store and looking to see what's new. I love there's a certain soap brand that I really like. They stopped making it. So that's unfortunate.
Well, your wife is happy about that. I think.
She is. She
didn't love
it.
the smell.
She
It was
hated
a dude soap for
Yeah.
sure.
Oh, really?
It was
very
awesome.
strong cologne
It's like
smell.
cedar.
Yeah.
It had a lot of cedar in it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, and that's, something my dad instilled in carrying on his legacy is made in America, made in Oklahoma. Support your friends, your family, your neighbors. And so if I'm carrying on his legacy, that needs to be instilled in the brand as well. So from top to bottom, everything we bring in is made in America.
So how do you just call certain people and be like, hey,
It takes a lot of time. Even from some of our big suppliers, like our boxes and our cellophane bags and things like that, I am nitpicking through their spec sheet as I'm ordering. And sometimes it's calling the rep going, I'm not finding this information. Can you give me an answer? And of course, during the pandemic, we had to pivot slightly here and there. But thankfully, our primary supplier for hard goods, their mission is very similar. And so I didn't really have to worry about it with them, which was great.
Well, when we were wrapping candy, she was actually like nitpicking the paper filling, like the quality of it and stuff. Like that's how detailed she goes with it.
But that's the difference between actually running a business and not just a hobby now. I mean, she's made it into something that's bigger than, like you said, what you are right now.
Well,
I mean,
and at the end of the day, we're a
growing.
gift company, whether it's a retail customer coming in for a birthday gift or a business client of ours, we need to make sure you look good. If you look good because we look good, then everybody's happy. So we don't cut corners.
Right.
And with that, I mean, we do pay our employees very well for the market. So there's a little bit of a premium on our products, but we're also not cutting ingredient corners. There's no funky, hard to pronounce ingredient names in our candy.
Can I ask what kind of whiskey you use?
It is a cooking whiskey, not a drinking whiskey. I'll leave it at that.
She also has a non-alcoholic, like whiskey, gin,
but doesn't it burn it
vodka,
out,
right?
Yeah.
It burns it out anyway.
Alcohol has a fairly low flash point. And so we do have, because we are in the middle of the Bible Belt, have a segment of customers that see our signature whiskey caramel and are like, oh, I can't have that. And I'm like, it flashes out. And either you can convince them or you can't.
Yeah.
And that's why we created like brown butter and honey as a secondary basic caramel flavor.
Yeah.
It's the same base recipe. It's just missing the whiskey. But it flashes out.
See, the one cooking thing I know.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's like cooking with wine.
You'll be okay.
Drink a little, cook a little, you're fine.
Yeah. Well, so
I didn't know there was a baking whiskey though. That kind of disappoints me.
It kind of caramelizes on its own and adds a pretty cool flavor.
Okay.
So, yeah.
What was the transition like going from fully online to actually having a storefront?
So part of that was my experience in high school and college of managing specialty retail stores. And because of that, I didn't want to start with retail. I knew the overhead expense that comes with that to begin with. And I'm a mom. I've got an almost 12 and 14-year-old, and so they were quite a bit younger at the time. And that's my
free
number.
labor, right?
Huh?
That's free labor coming
Actually,
up.
they're both on payroll.
Okay. Yeah, they should be.
There are tax benefits
They should
there.
be. That makes sense. Yeah.
They're a really good accountant that helps you with those things, but they don't just get paid. They're in there cleaning the toilets and they're, actually working, but no. But yeah, it was a shift, but I needed to make sure I was mom first at that stage of our business and then add the retail store after. So.
But like the rush, that anxiety that goes through you, you're like, should I take that journey? Should I not?
It was so hard. I mean, financially, we bootstrapped this whole startup.
Right.
But we had to borrow a little bit of money to get the brick and mortar up and running. And that has a whole story in itself. Our intention was to move from northeastern Oklahoma to our hometown to open that brick and mortar. And we had a location with a signed lease, had been paying over $4,000 a month on a lease that was down to the studs, and then kept running into brick walls and issues, whether it was the city we were dealing with or a lender that made promises that fell through. Just a variety of things that I had to keep questioning at every turn. Am I doing the right thing?
Right.
But we made this commitment to move from northeastern Oklahoma, where we were there for my husband's career, to come home for this. So it was like, I'm not going to fail and let my kids see me fail.
Right.
So we, finding the right lender that had belief behind us, and we didn't need a big loan. It was a little loan.
But still need a little help.
Yeah. And so at that point, it was like pivoting again. We were behind schedule a little bit more because we had to look for another location. We had to get our attorney involved to buy ourselves out of that lease and find another location. And so where we're at now is a stepping stone. I was scrolling after all of this fell through in our hometown, scrolling Facebook with tears in my eyes late one night in the marketplace and found this second generation kitchen. And immediately the next morning called the guy that owned it, or not owned it, but he's the property manager, and went and looked at it the very next day. And it was like angels were singing. Like,
so this is perfect.
Like a great demographic in Oklahoma City. Probably not the most ideal location for lack of street frontage, but it was like exactly what we needed.
At that moment.
Yeah. We had to run a gas line for our stove because the prior bakery used electric ovens, but that wasn't a massive investment, but everything else was plumbed out and ready to go.
So, I mean, do you see something? Have you looked farther ahead? Or are you still like just embracing the moment you have?
I'm not somebody that can sit still very well. And Tim probably knows this. And it might be just I'm undiagnosed ADHD, but 100% fall in that category. Yeah. And I use it as a superpower. It's not a crutch. I have 2 years left in my lease, and it's for a year now. I've been thinking, what's next?
Right.
And I'm so divided as our city grows. Do we go more into the tourism location, like downtown OKC area?
Downtown Edmond.
Yeah. Do we stay where we're at for another year or two and rat hole some cash away to buy a building of our own? There's a lot of
so many
options.
Moving parts.
At the end of the day, we are busting at the seams at our current location. Especially in the fall and winter months. So something's going to have to happen.
Are you working the OKC night markets again this year?
We apply, of course. We did that market from day one during the pandemic, but they've had some turn of staff, and so I've lost kind of those connections. And last year, I think we were accepted into one of them, and I don't know.
Because the Herd on Herd in Edmond, I mean, they have a lot of little boosts.
They do,
and that would,
The hard part for us with outdoor markets is our candy doesn't do well beyond about mid-May, and then we can't go back to outdoor until like late September, early October.
And that's because you don't inject it full of preservatives, right?
I mean, caramel, toffee, things like that, they're more tolerable than chocolate, but they still have a melting point.
Yeah.
So I don't want to turn out, when we do Scissortail Park Night Market, we're loading up huge ice chests with ice packs just to keep the ambient temperature down. But there's only so much I can haul in my truck at a time.
Yeah. Has that been a pretty good one for you? Has it been sales or brand awareness, or what's been the biggest?
Both. Anytime we do events, pop-up events in the metro, it's really for marketing, and then sales come secondary to promote that brick and mortar. And we're always handing out coupons, come by and see us. And it's fun to be able to track as those come back.
Well, when you asked her, like, are you looking at this year? I was like, Melissa's probably 10 years. She's probably got 10 years already.
Like, I don't know. I always joke that, like, Molly, if you will, has a life of her own, and I'm just here to, like, guide that ship. But, of course, as the CEO, you have to think about that. And it's like, I don't want to take another loan. But if there's a viable option and the economy is stable enough to take another loan to grow, we will. But
I don't know of any other candy shops that are out there. I mean, what does that look like?
We have a few that
you know what I'm saying?
Like,
you kind of have the niche, you kind of have the market, because like if you go to Santa Fe, New Mexico, there's a candy shop every corner. In Oklahoma, there's not. So it's that's really awesome.
What's crazy for us is I don't dig into SEO as much as I used to have time for, just for time's sake. It's always changing. But like what we've done now, we're still getting phone calls from people going, do you carry flavored Jelly Bellies or colored M&Ms? And I'm like, we don't carry mass-produced candy. So Oklahoma is still such a young state compared to the East and the West Coast. It was nothing in the 1800s and early 1900s for every little neighborhood in New York to have their own candy shop.
Right.
So people that grew up there get it. But Okies are like, what? You make your own candy?
You don't go to Walmart and go get that?
Yeah.
You go down there to Walmart.
I just want some Skittles.
And what's neat for us, like, we don't work with chocolate. So we really kind of are in our own little world.
So it's just any kind. So if somebody says, hey, I want something, can you make it special for them? Or
kind of depends on order size and whatnot. We've got a huge variety. We've got handcrafted marshmallows. The caramel is our signature line. Dye-free cotton candy, toffees, brittles. We're working on a new, I'll tell you guys off the mic what I'm working on.
Okay, that's why you got to go to the brick and mortar.
Waiting on some equipment to arrive to add another product line. But it's really just bringing like old school candy back, handcrafted small batch with cleaner ingredients. So.
And you've got, it's not cotton candy, but we call it
candy floss.
Okay.
which is a nod to the history of cotton candy. A dentist created it and called it candy floss.
Isn't that kind of ironic, though?
I know. He was
dentist?
a marketing genius, really.
I think it was. It's like job security 101.
Yeah. And, for us, when we came out with it, we didn't add dyes to it, thinking it was like an adult cotton candy. Like, we don't need pink and blue cotton candy from the fair. Well, now it's gaining traction from a whole nother segment that wants dye-free candy for their kids.
Oh, that's
like, I'm not
awesome.
super crunchy, if you will. Like, I'm going to drink a Coke, but if I can find a dye-free option here and there, I'm going to dive in. So, yeah.
But now that people are starting to actually
think about
figure out what's wrong that's actually affecting their bodies.
We don't need Red
smart.
40 and things.
Leave that stuff alone.
Yeah.
What's been the biggest hurdle for you? I know we talked about this before we started recording, but when it comes to building a team, right, looking for the right people, how has that kind of been for you? What are some roadblocks you kind of run into with that?
The biggest roadblock, I'm willing to take anybody with the right mindset and teach them the skills that it takes. We have such a unique business model that I can't find somebody like someone with fast food experience is not necessarily going to apply in our business. Somebody with only retail. So it's kind of finding those people, as small as we are, that are okay with going to the kitchen and hand wrapping caramels, but also being presentable and professional enough to jump up front and help with retail customers. So it's a mentality thing, I think, more than anything, making sure that it's a culture fit.
Now, Votex have like cooking. Is that But is that too young of a demographic?
Not necessarily. I'm on the advisory council for Francis Tuttle's culinary program down the road from us. The hard part is most of their students already have full-time careers or in the culinary program at night or whatever, or they're really looking for like a restaurant type experience.
What's a like one quality that you look for whenever you're trying to hire somebody?
Attitude.
Okay.
What kind of attitude? Like that's no.
Yeah, not
Popeyes.
Yeah,
not Popeyes.
not like obnoxiously optimistic.
Right.
Like, I don't want someone to be oblivious to the ways of the world, but somebody that can be kind and energetic, but firm with certain situations when they need to be. And it's so hard. So hard.
So would it be like I'm thinking to myself, like, who could actually bake? Like, my granny used to bake. I'm like, would that older crowd like be a niche for you? I don't know.
I think there's a younger crowd that would love to learn.
Yeah.
But even in culinary school, like, there's a very small section, unless you're pastry driven, there's a very small section on pastry. But even within pastry, that's breads and cakes and things that we don't fit into. And so I would really almost rather have somebody without culinary school experience to like break the mold and teach them what the Maillard reaction is of sugar and just go
that
from
went
there.
over my head just now. It's like the Maillard reaction.
how it changes, right?
As it like turns golden as you're boiling sugar, that's a whole chemical reaction, which is the basis of caramel. You can't rush it, and you can't introduce like unboiled sugar to the boiling sugar. It's going to crystallize and change the texture.
So only reason I know a little bit of this because my wife likes to bake and she like tries to make caramel, and I remember she going, "Oh, it broke," and threw it away and start over again. And so
even a half a degree off, the texture's changed.
Wow.
We've got it down to the degree on when to turn that fire off and pull it off the stove.
It's an art. Like, it's no joke.
It's like you have to be patient, but also move fast enough at the split second. But then you're dealing with boiling sugar, so like workers' comp. You
have gloves and stuff. And
literally, I have scars to show.
Bet.
So other than the new product, what's kind of something that you're thinking about pushing for? What does that look like for you?
I have a new project in works that kind of coincides. Naturally, I have a lot of small business product owners that have kind of come to me for advice and tips. And so I'm actually working on a side business for a coaching and mentoring program, mastermind of sorts.
That's perfect.
But I've got some major imposter syndrome tied to that, though. It's like, how do you put a monetary value to your time? But then I also have to make sure that it's enough that it's worth pulling away from the business I'm growing at the same time. So,
and that's what we tell Tim. I mean, he thinks he's not a really good networker, and I mean, he's probably top of the line.
Tim and I approach networking the same. We're just humans.
Yeah.
And we go in genuinely to get to know people.
Right.
Like, I have almost, I don't want to say stopped going to networking groups that
has.
I've kind of stopped going to networking groups
This one
because
has.
it's this, here's my card, here's my card, here's my card. And it's like, now who are you? What are you doing? Like, that's just not the right approach.
No,
So-
it just, I think for him now, it's more like brand awareness now. It's like,
100%.
hey, A&T's here if you need us.
Yeah.
Get yourself out of there.
And the reality, unfortunately, for me, with even corporate gifting, is some of the people that are going to the networking groups are not the decision makers. I need biz dev and marketing directors from multi-million dollar a year revenue companies that are going to see the
That's your
value of
target.
utilizing. So
I've seen so many people go into the networking space and then just end up either wasting their time or they'll end up quitting after like 3 months and be like, oh, this is a total waste of time.
it's the slow game.
Yeah, but it's like you don't know your market, and a lot of things, even for me, haven't hatched, so to speak, for like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So it's like you're going in there with a long-term mindset of more of farming everything rather than
planting the
cut and
seeds
burn,
and
you know?
fertilize and
Yeah. Well, that's exciting. I mean, I think like your business model, and Tim tells me a lot about, because when we're getting together, it tells me a lot of good stuff of how you're driven by that. And that's amazing that you've gone as far as you have. But if you're a homeowner, let's just say a homeowner trying to make something, where's a good start for them to, before they go into your shop, maybe? You know what I'm saying? Like, would that be anything helpful for a homeowner? Like, just read the instructions? Would that be the best thing?
I mean, that it doesn't matter what aspect of life. People don't read. I mean, even the last time we had a job posting, I had a simple of, please do not call our retail store asking about the position. Please submit resume to, and it's constant, like, just, people don't read. And I'm like, and you're not getting an interview because you can't even follow a simple instruction.
Right.
Yeah.
So for that homeowner, would that be the biggest thing, or do you think just do it out of, I don't know.
I think it's got to be part passion and part like method.
Right. So
And that's hard for, you either are a creative mind or you're a math and science mind, and it's hard to find a melding of the two. But
yeah. Well, all the homeowners, they can just, I know his wife can bake.
Yeah.
So
so I can cook pretty decently, but I don't measure.
Yeah.
I throw in things. I know what things taste good, the seasoning, throw it in there. These two can go together, and I taste it. My wife asked me like, oh my gosh, how did you make that? I don't know. I just threw stuff in there.
Intuition in a way. I mean, and like we're of that age too, like Food Network was huge. Like it's still around, but it had a peak in the 90s for sure. I mean, I was watching Martha Stewart as a kid.
Yeah.
It's just, people don't do that anymore, you know, but you learn a lot just watching cooking shows. Like we know strawberries and onions don't go well together.
Right.
that's a good point. But I bet you can make it happen if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
Gee. Be like those jelly beans, that have a mystery flavor and they're gross.
Yeah, I know.
So is there anything that fills you up, gets you excited besides because like when your back's against the wall, you strive to get better and better and better.
Yeah.
Well, like vacation wise, is it just?
I'm so ready for vacation. What is a vacation? It's hard to turn it off, you know. I try to turn it off, but I think God has given me just this knack for entrepreneurship. Right. That it's really just who I am. So I'm constantly like, I don't know, and it's again probably the ADHD in me. There's like 20 things going through my mind at any given time. I can be listening to a podcast and then my mind strays because that speaker said one little thing. And then I'm like, oh crap, I missed all that they said. And I have to rewind 5 minutes and it's a mess. But really what fills my cup is just being a mentor to other small business owners.
That's really awesome.
So, yeah.
So how's that at the dinner table? You and your husband, 2 kids.
And he's a pharmacist.
Yeah.
Just,
I didn't know that.
I am married to an introvert. I am an extrovert. So I've recognized after 21 years together, I have to give him about an hour, really probably 2 to 3 hours every evening of defrag time.
Preach.
And I just, I get that look from him and I just come home and I'm like, and I feel like guilty because his job is very stressful and he's kind of burned out in the industry, but can't leave because of student loans. That he's like, literally, he grew up on a farm. He's like, I think I'm just going to go back to digging ditches. If I could make what I make now digging ditches, that's what I would do. And I'm like, yeah, except your student loans are here. So not. But
keep rocking it.
For me, what fuels me is to get our business to the point that he can walk away if he needs to or go to part-time at least because hate watching him be miserable.
Yeah.
And then it's not fair. I come home and I'm excited about my day and who I've talked to and what I've seen and who I've met. And he just kind of has that blank, like, I need defrag time before anything comes out of your mouth.
Yeah.
So after that that conversation, is it about your work and how things are?
Absolutely.
Because
and his too. Yeah.
My wife is extrovert. Introvert.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if she wants to talk about work, she'll have to ask me because it never shuts off. That's part of my life.
Right.
When me and my sister, we go to a family thing, we're talking about work, even though it's not really like an inconvenience. Like, hey, guess what? We got that job. Hey, we get this, blah, blah, blah. And it's stuff that fills us up.
Yeah.
When you're at home, it's kind of hard to have that conversation unless they're ready. Like, how'd it go? Yeah. Oh, it went well. We're
For
still
me,
moving.
I'm a natural, and I think most spouses are a fixer for their spouse. And so I have to remind myself that sometimes he just needs to vent and doesn't need a solution.
That's hard.
And it's really hard to just literally put my hand over my mouth sometimes and just let him talk and me not respond at all, ever. And that's usually what it takes.
I'm definitely, as soon as I get a problem, it's like, oh, I can fix it. Let's just do this and this and this. And it's like, oh, yeah, I need to shut up.
Well, and it's like for him, naturally, he works with a lot of women. And I'm sorry, but we're different creatures. And so sometimes it's even just like, not in his current position, but we used to co-own a pharmacy and it was a bunch of women and it would build and build and build until he was like ready to explode. And so I finally one day strolled into the pharmacy on his day off and I was like, hey girls, how's it going? And they're like, hey, and I took cupcakes in or whatever, which was not unusual for me. And I was like, quick question. Have y'all ever been able to figure out like when he's about had enough? And they just kind of looked at me and I was like, this is something you probably, like, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, need to focus on. I was like, when he flares his nose.
No way.
And I figured that out early in our relationship. When those nostrils flare.
Really? I'm like, how do...
But he'll bottle it up until he's just had enough.
Yeah.
And at home, I was catching enough of the crap that was going on, drama between the girls at work, and he wasn't like, he's like, they should figure it out. They're grown adults, whatever. Well, they weren't. And so I had to go pay attention to that. And guess what? It dissolved itself magically because I think they finally realized, okay, she's hinting at something. We should take it in,
Take a listen.
Yeah.
Well, that's really...
That would have been I don't know. I don't know if I could have survived after that, like a intense glare kind of thing, how you hint to that, because that could be scary.
Well, and he's so like empathetic and kind that he would have never like looked at them and flared his nose, but he's probably staring at the computer screen, flaring his nose as he's hearing things behind him.
Yeah.
So how do you do that with your work? I mean, you have two... Did you have more than two employees before?
Oh, yeah. No, we've had several. And my operations manager was like my right hand. And so she was we were a lot alike and different enough in a lot of ways that we really complemented each other. But there have been times that my business law professor taught us the art of a crap sandwich, but he didn't call it crap.
Yeah.
And so I've had to learn that in every aspect of life, whether it's my children or my employees. And there are times that you have to have those difficult conversations. And it's like, you start with the good, like, listen, you're an asset to the team. I really love this and this and this about you. The reality is this, and this cannot continue. How can we work together to find a solution? And 99% of the times that works.
Yeah.
There's been a fairly recent scenario between two that it didn't work, and we just find a solution, and they can no longer work together, but they both bring so many things to the plate that they're an asset to the business, So you just have to be creative with solutions, but...
Wow.
It's hard.
In the candy business, there's drama. So you can do a
people
movie?
business.
I know.
Yeah,
I
know. Humans.
The candy shop.
I tell everyone I'm not perfect. I'm a hot mess half the time. I've got one employee, bless her heart. She is very introverted and very detail oriented, which I need. Like she is perfect for the role she's in, and I love her dearly. But my ADHD all over the place quite literally drives her crazy. And so I recognize it and we just laugh about it.
Yeah.
But I'm sure she goes home to her husband and is like, oh my gosh.
She's got me on one today.
I cannot do this.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I'm not a bad person to work for. I'm just a little crazy.
Yeah.
But I mean, what you've accomplished in the last 3 years and have the employees that you can do that with and build this I would say it's an empire doing that many things. I mean, your husband's on board. I mean, that's even better.
Yeah, he was doing it. Actually, I almost called you actually over the weekend. We have a weird water line that came with the building that I think a valve was wearing out over time. And so I made him come up and fix it. I was like, if you can't fix it, I'm calling A&T.
Let's go. There's a plug.
This is our slow season, and then cash is a little tight right now, so we're going to see if we can cap this one little bitty line off. And so far it's holding.
Yeah,
but
it's kind of an older, kind of wonky building.
Nothing was ever done properly, and our current property manager is kind of we get along great, love him dearly, but corners are cut 9 times out of 10. And you look at something, you're like, oh, okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for coming. At the end of the day, loving life, and I appreciate you coming and sharing with us. Go to your brick and mortar show building. Do you have like the website? You want to speak that out?
It's mollycoddledhashslinger.net. We do ship nationwide, and then brick and mortar for Oklahoma City is at 122nd Rockwell.
Please go visit her and enjoy this wonderful candy she's got.
Thanks.
So
thanks for coming on.